This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English, episode number 236, baby. Oh yeah. In today's episode, we have a guest. Yes, that's right. We have Halima from Blackboard English. And if you are a true rock and roller, you will know that Halima has been on the podcast before. She was on episode 137, so almost exactly 100 episodes ago, 99 episodes ago. Anyway, Halima has a wonderful life story, so I fully suggest you go back and listen to that episode 137 where she goes into a bit more detail about that. She also has a thriving community online, so thriving we could describe as growing, booming, fantastic, let's say. So you can find her on Facebook and Instagram if you look for Blackboard English. And she also has an academy called the Female Language Academy, which again is a thriving community. You can go and have a look on her website, which is blackboardenglish.com. All of the links will be in the show notes. But Halima lives in London, okay? Now, I get a lot of questions about London from students. What's London like? Blah, blah, blah. I lived there for a couple of years. I'm actually in my home city at the moment, which is very near to London as well. So I thought we would do an episode about London and talk about some of the home truths, let's say, of London. There's a lovely term, home truth. It's kind of like a fact which is true, but sometimes not great, sometimes maybe a bit unpleasant. Sometimes people don't tell you these home truths because they're not nice things to say, so people just avoid it. So we talk about some of the home truths and also some of the good stuff. So here is the episode. I forgot to highlight the rock and roll vocabulary during the episode. Sometimes, especially when I have a guest, I just kind of forget. I get lost in the conversation and forget. But I've picked out some pieces of R&R vocabulary from the conversation and we'll go through them with you at the end. So here is the conversation. Happy listening. So, hello Halima and welcome back again to Rock and Roll English.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. You've been once, is it once or twice you've been on?
Just the once, I think 3 years ago.
Right, okay. I thought if it was the third time, maybe I would give you like a memento or something like that. But the second, okay, next time I'll I don't know, give you like a Rock and Roll English mug or something, okay?
Amazing.
So
I didn't know that existed. You guys have mugs?
Not really, no. In fact,
okay.
I'd have to make one for you. Maybe that will be the start of the Rock and Roll English mug. So, Halima, last time I think we just spoke about languages in general, but this time I thought we'd speak about something a bit more specific because you live in one of the world's biggest cities, I'd imagine. I haven't done enough research, but I'd imagine London is one of the biggest cities in the world. I lived in London for a couple of years and I often get questions from students about London, so I thought we could just have a chat about London, okay?
Okay, I'm ready.
Some of the stranger things, maybe, let's say. So the first thing I've got on my list, I always do 5 minutes research for a podcast, is it says you will never visit the tourist attractions if you live in London. Is this the case for you?
Do you know what? That is so true because I think it's true for everyone in the world. When you live in the city where everybody wants to visit, you never actually go to the place where everybody else around the world wants to visit. I'll give you an example. When I was living in Egypt, most of the people from Egypt had never visited the pyramids, which I thought, that's super interesting. And it made me feel a little bit better about not visiting so many places in central London and all around the UK that most tourists would absolutely love to visit.
I'm exactly the same as you. And strangely enough, I've visited I would say nearly every tourist attraction in Italy. But in England, like I think I only actually went to the British Museum about 3 years ago because all of my students kept saying, when I went to London, I went to the British Museum. And I was always like, yeah, it's great. But really thinking, I've never been there. I've got no idea what it's like. And there are still so many places. I've actually written some down. So places I've never been to: the National Gallery, Royal Albert Hall, the Tower of London, the Natural History Museum. We went there for a school trip.
Yeah.
So I luckily covered that one. But now actually, when I go back to England, let's say non-COVID times, I actually... So if I meet my friends in London, which is quite a common thing, I will often say now, like, let's meet at Covent Garden, just so I can just go and see some touristy places. And then they all say, are you crazy? Like, there's no way I want to go to Covent Garden. Is that the same for you? If someone says to you, like, let's meet at Covent Garden?
So that's what I was going to say. When I recently came back to the UK about 3 years ago. Before that, I had never been to any place that the school, like my school, didn't take me to. But ever since I've come back, I've always tried to make an excuse to meet, just like you, like in different areas of London. And I've actually gone to quite a few like touristic places just because I'm like, oh my God, like I'm in the same situation as you, where students are like, you're so lucky to be in the place that I want to visit. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I've never been to.
Yeah, it's a great place that I've never been there either, even though it's about like 20 minutes on the train.
But you must have passed the different places though, right? Like sometimes it's hard not to pass them at least.
Yeah, of course. But at the same time, like my time in London, like when you're in central London, there are so many big like buildings, and sometimes you just kind of think like, another big building. And it's probably like the Royal Albert Hall or something like that. And I was just like, oh well, yeah, I'll just keep listening to the music on like my headphones kind of thing. I look back at that time and think like, wow, what was I doing? But yeah, and the other strange thing is a lot of these places, especially museums, are actually free to go to, aren't they? So it's not you haven't even got the excuse of it's too expensive, because it's actually free, and you think, well, why have I never been there?
Yeah, and I think the reason why we're underwhelmed by these places, I think, is because we tend to kind of just take it for granted.
Absolutely.
So the minute someone says, oh, they're going to take down Trafalgar Square and they're no longer going to have it available, you're going to start thinking, when do I need to go?
Yeah.
And like,
that's terrible. Trafalgar Square that I've literally never been to.
You've never been to... Trafalgar Square is literally the... Oh, you have? Okay.
I have, but...
I was going to say.
Literally just like passing by. I mean, I haven't, I mean, you go there. I mean, there's not a lot to do. You sort of, I don't know, have a little walk around and then go. So it's not a place that I go often. But Trafalgar Square is one at least that I have been to. But
it's it's not like you were like, oh, let's plan the day and go to Trafalgar Square.
No,
you're moving from one street to the next, and you're like, oh, that's Trafalgar Square, right? That's what happened to me. Oh, look at all the pigeons. Like,
I think what actually happened, which was a classic, happened to me many times, of thinking like, you know what, I don't want to get the tube because I don't like spending all of my time underground, so I'm going to get the bus. And then I would get the wrong bus and then start thinking, oh shit, where am I? And whilst on the wrong bus, like past Trafalgar Square, I think, there's Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
That kind of thing happened to me.
Yeah, that's happened to me. It's like I always get lost. Now I understand the underground a little bit better, but definitely getting lost has ended up me visiting all these different touristic places. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was always quite comfortable with the underground because I think it's quite a good map and everything. It's all quite well signposted, but it led to me not knowing any streets in London, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, as soon as you walk off like one of the main streets, I would immediately think, right, now I need to get the tube to go like one stop. When in reality, often that one stop in central London is about, like a 5, maximum 10-minute walk.
Very close to each other.
But you kind of think, right, well, I need to take the tube. That's certainly what I used to do. So another point I've got here, it says, friends who live the opposite side of London may as well be in Australia. What are your thoughts on that?
Do you know what? I agree with that because it literally takes me an hour to reach like the other side of London, sometimes 2 hours, depending on where I'm going. And usually I'm always the one that like takes the tube. And at the beginning, I was so enthusiastic because I was almost like a tourist coming back, right? So when you haven't lived in London for so long, you hear lots of people saying, oh, you're so lucky to be from London, blah, blah, blah. So you have a newfound kind of excitement when you come back. And I'm sure you're probably going to be the same when you do return back to London after not being here for such a long time.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it does, like I always used to volunteer to come all the way to wherever they are. And now slowly I'm like, no, we're going to meet in the middle.
This is something I don't think people fully appreciate, that if you live in London, even if you live in unless you're really rich, like no one lives in zone 1, do they? Like,
no.
Unless you're like, like Prince William, like no one lives in zone 1. So for example, when I was living in London, I was renting an apartment in zone 2, for example. So, like very close to central London. But even to get anywhere, like you're looking at like 30-40 minutes by the time you walk from your house to the tube station, which like, I don't know, 10 minutes, like you get on the tube, if you have to change, like to go anywhere is like 30-40 minutes, which is just standard for people in London. In fact, I've got a statistic where it says the average commute, so the journey to work, is 74 minutes for a Londoner. So you live in London and it takes you 74 minutes, so 1 hour and 14 minutes, and that's totally normal. Whilst anywhere else, so for example here where I live in Sicily, I moved out of the city and it takes me, like, to go to my job, it took me like 30 minutes to get to work, and everyone was like, oh my god, that's so long. But because obviously like I've still got the mentality of like from like living and working in London, I was like, that's not long at all. Like 30 minutes is quite good. If you talk to anyone in London and say it takes me 30 minutes to get to work, they will say, oh, that's great.
Yeah, the other day I joined this gym and I found out it's 30 minutes from my house. And I was so happy. I was like, oh my goodness, that is so close to my house. Because I imagined it to be at least an hour from where I live. But when something is 30 minutes, you're like, oh my God, you've just hit the jackpot because you're so close to the house. It's never less than that. Like, I think that's an anomaly, having being able to travel for 30 minutes. It's and that statistic is absolutely correct, because wherever I go around London, it always takes an hour and a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I love that expression as well, an hour and a bit. It's a perfect way to describe 74 minutes, an hour and a bit. I completely agree. And it does get tiring as well. I remember when I was living in London, or like spending so much time on the tube, and like especially in those winter months as well, when it was like dark and cold, I just literally made me tired.
Actually, I prefer the winter months underground. You haven't tried going on the tube during the summer?
Yeah, that's terrible.
With a mask on.
Oh, with a mask? No, I've not done that. Yeah,
it is a special kind of hell. Like, it really is.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Wow, I actually remember being on the tube once, and in the summer, obviously no masks or anything like that. This was long before COVID, and a woman fainted, like fell to the floor, and the worst thing was there was just like no compassion. Everyone was just like, oh, like, I've got a meeting in 10 minutes, and I was just like this is terrible. Like, it's a terrible picture of humans.
Well, I mean, I feel like maybe a lot of people might think she was drunk, because we do get lots of drunk people just kind of like rolling in and asking people for money, or just, you know what I mean? Like,
also true.
So a lot of, but you're right. Like, Londoners tend to be jaded. They tend to be, nothing really, I don't know, surprises them, if that makes sense.
I would agree with that, actually. Yeah.
And they're very unfriendly, I would say, because
absolutely,
when I was coming from another country where everybody wants to talk to you and be your friend and smile at you or make conversation, and when I came back to the UK and everybody's just giving me like evil looks, and I'm like, okay, something's different here. And I remember speaking to this old woman who was it looked like she was in her 90s or something. She was waiting for the bus, and I wanted to start conversation with her, because I was used to this way of like life coming back from Egypt. And she was like, I was like, why is, like, I just started with, why do you think no one's friendly in this country? Like, no one wants to start a conversation. And she was like, where'd you come from? And I said, like, I came from Egypt. I just came back. And she was like, yeah, that's why you guys got sun over there. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
that might, I think there could be some truth in that. Yes, the same for me here now. I think I'm so used to like having like sunshine, it just makes me feel better. And in fact, one of the things I've got on this list is friendliness should definitely always be met with suspicion and utmost confusion, because it is so strange for someone just to be like nice, or even just to talk to you. And I must admit, it's the same for me. If I'm in London and just a random person starts talking to me, then immediately I'm thinking like, what's going on here? Which is a terrible thing to say, really, because I don't know why you can't just be friendly to someone. Like, there's nothing wrong. Just the other day, I was at the beach with my wife, my daughter, and next to us there were some other children, and they were digging a hole, and they were kind of throwing sand on us. And my wife was getting a bit angry, and I was like, look, they're just children, like, don't worry. And then I realised it was the best hole in the world. So I started talking to these children, saying like, that's a great hole, like, well done for that. And my wife was saying like, stop, like, people are going to think like you're strange. And I was thinking, like, have we got to the point already where you can't just talk to someone else? I was literally just being nice. Sad state of affairs, I think. And this, I think, in London is especially like it happens more than anywhere, I think, of it's just like you can't be friendly to people. Just ignore everyone. Yeah, like it's been 3 years now that I've, obviously I lived here before, but then I left. So it's been 3 years like consecutively. And if someone comes to me now and tries to talk to me, like, I'm just going to be like, why? Like, why are you trying to talk? Like, so you kind of adapt. What's wrong with you? Like, you adapt to the culture really quickly. And it's like, you just learn that that's not the right thing to do. And so when someone does it, it's very, very strange. I completely agree. And so speaking of the culture, one of the things, for example, is like how everyone's in just a rush all the time. It says here, so fast walking is an important London life skill. And it says you think slow walkers are the worst people ever. And again, I'll admit I was guilty of this, of like someone walking in front of me just thinking like, what are you doing? Just walk a bit faster. And because it just sort of takes over you. I remember I used to work, I had to cross London Bridge when I went to work, and like the people walking, like, it was like if you stopped for a minute, people would just like walk over you. And I remember some tourists taking some pictures, and like everyone was just going like, what are you doing? Like, I need to go to work. You think like it's almost like a vicious place, really. Yeah, it's definitely, I would say that it's in all aspects of the London life is very, very fast. There's always something happening. You're either going to work, coming back to work, paying bills,
no one, there's no like, I was talking to my friend who's from, like, she's living in Perth at the moment, and she was just, she was comparing London to Perth, Australia. Okay. And she was saying how people here are so much slower, and not here as in London, but in Australia.
Right, got ya.
They tended to be much slower. They were into yoga, eating right, and like just doing things that were leisurely, leisure activities. Like instead of like just running and being like, I feel like we're gonna end up like New York, to the point of New York, because I compared New York to London, and it's almost similar, but New York is a little bit more wild and fast. I feel like a lot faster than London.
Really? I mean, I've been to New York twice. I actually didn't. I got the impression that it's like faster in London. Maybe it just because the times I travelled and stuff like this. So, for example, another great example of this, I think, is like the tube, for example. And if you have to wait 10 minutes for a train, I think anywhere like that's okay. For example, if in Sicily here, if I had to wait 10 minutes for a train, I would think amazing. Like, this is perfect. If you have to wait 10 minutes for a train in London, a tube, like it's like the world is ending. And again, I will admit, I remember going down to like the tube, especially quite late at night, maybe on a like Friday, Saturday night, and seeing 10 minutes and just thinking like, I don't even know if I'll be alive in 10 minutes. Like, I don't know if I don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's so long that my life could end in that time.
I just, I agree with you there. I really do. The other day I was going to my sister's house when London flooded.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that, but I had to wait like 15 minutes. And it was like, what is going on? Like, it was just insane to me. I was like, something must have happened, because I'm so used to every single 3 minutes there's a new train, like another one and another one and another one, and it's almost like no one stops, right? Like we just keep going, which I love. I love that so much, the fact that we don't have to wait. So yes, I do agree with that. 10 minutes.
And it's crazy when you think about it, because 10 minutes isn't that long.
No.
But yeah, in sort of London time, that's a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And so something else now, which I think has changed, because when I was living in London, the last tube was about like 12:30 at night. But now I think it goes all night. Is that right? Some lines of the tube go all night. Is that right?
I'm not sure actually. I'm just like, from my area at 12 o'clock it closes, but I don't remember.
That was the worst thing. Okay, so it still happens then when you miss the last tube, and it's, oh my god, that happened to me so many times, thinking, now what am I going to do? I remember taking night buses falling asleep on them, waking up like in like the other side of the world, because taxis were so expensive. But now there's Uber, isn't there?
Yep, Ubers are the best.
Yeah, that seems quite big in London. It's actually illegal here in Italy, so I'm not really so like clued up. I'm not so well informed on Uber. But back in the day when I lived in London, to get a taxi home was like, again, I think only royalty actually got taxis home. The rest of us were trying to get on night buses and doing a tour of London I think process,
it's not common
basically
for most people to take black cabs. They're not. They're just so expensive, and I found out recently that black cab drivers have to go through like intensive testing. They have to know every single road in London. Yeah,
that's crazy. There's a test called the knowledge, and they have to literally know every road in London, which is so ridiculous now because they all use the technology. Like, I can understand that 30 years ago, but it doesn't make any sense now because they still even use it. Like, it's not like when you get in a black cab they just don't use it. They still use it. So I just think, what's the point in making them study for a really difficult exam and then which to like get knowledge that they're not even going to use because they're just going to use their phones.
Yep, exactly. I mean, GPS is the way now. Yeah,
exactly. So it's strange. Okay, so the last one I've got here is that everywhere seems cheap in comparison to London. What do you think about that? Is it true?
Let me see. Yeah, probably. Like, so it's yes, I would agree with that. Do you know what? Because I'm trying to think about all the countries that I've been to. There's only probably one country where I was like, whoa, this country is like super cheap. And then I realized that actually it wasn't. But like every country you go to, the first thing you do is like you say, oh, how much is that bar of chocolate? And then immediately you convert it to, oh, it's only 5 cents in England. Wow.
Well, yeah, the like things like food, drink, and stuff like that. But London, I think the main problem is like rent or like houses, because if you want to buy a house or rent a house anywhere else, anywhere else, it's just so much cheaper. So, for example, when I was living in London, I was paying about £700 a month for a room, and then I moved to Rome. And I was paying €700 a month for a studio flat in the centre, all mine. And I was like, this is really cheap.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Sicily and I was paying $350 a month for a really nice studio flat in the centre of the city with a lovely terrace. And I was paying $350 a month. And so like the thought now of paying $700 for a room, like, that's just normal though when you're in London. I didn't even think this is expensive. It was just the norm.
Wait, do you know that's not the cost of houses anymore in London? It's like that is like 700. Like, was it for an apartment or? Sorry, no, I didn't catch.
For a room in Zone
for a
2.
Room. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, exactly. That makes more sense. I thought it was like an apartment or a house for 700. I was like, no, what?
Exactly. So that's what I mean, like that and transport. I mean, admittedly, transport like certainly works a lot better than like other places I've been to. But again, it's so expensive. If you just think of your like rent or your like mortgage or whatever plus transport already, we say that shelling out. You're spending so much money already without even doing anything. We're just literally living and going to work.
Yeah, that's true. So every time I leave the house, I come back like poorer. Like it literally is. It's like, okay, I'm going to go on the train, £10. You know what I mean? For going to the train and back with the bus. And that's like from my expenses. And then I'll go and have a cup of coffee, which will cost about £4.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like, that's like normal prices. And then you go out for dinner and it will cost like around £20. So it's like, okay, like that's without dessert. And it's like, you know what I mean? It can be quite pricey. Compared to other countries. Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, I hadn't really noticed this. Everything was just normal for me until like in Sicily. Like, I mean, if you have to pay €1 for a coffee, like that's expensive if you have to pay €1. So now when I go home and like you said, go out for dinner or do something, or even just take the train.
Yeah.
And then, so for example, for me, it's like 30 minutes to get to London, and to go there and back will be like £25. And already I'm thinking like, oh, like, you know, like it's like someone punched me in the stomach, like when I have to spend that money.
No, now I understand fully what you meant about like London being so expensive. Once you start living in a place like Sicily where everything is dirt so cheap. Yeah. So the rent is 300. I'm just wondering how much everything else costs because I'm packing my bags.
Well, yeah. I mean, I bought a house a few years ago, and let's say you wouldn't even get. I don't think you would even get like a wardrobe for probably like what because I remember once actually when I was looking for a flat in London and looking to rent a place, and then I saw somewhere and it was like 600 a month and it was really central, and I thought, fantastic, this is great. And then I did a bit more research and it was just a car parking space. So that's what I mean.
That's definitely happened to many people out there. They're like, oh my God, too good to be true. Oh, car park space.
Yeah, like I don't even think my house would be a car parking space in London, basically. But yeah, that's. I hope people have got some more information about London, because I get lots of questions from students about London. I think people have this kind of misconception of, like, certainly here anyway, it's like this wonderful place, everything's perfect. I mean, it is nice, of course.
Yeah.
But nowhere in the world is perfect, and also London isn't perfect. But like I said, there are also many, many wonderful things in London. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. There, especially like the food here is amazing. Compared to the rest of the world. Like, in comparison, you can get amazing food here from all over the world.
That's the benefit. Yeah,
definitely. What's the other? I've run out of benefits.
All of the places you can visit that we never visit, they're all really good. Like the Natural History Museum, and I mean, as well, there is so much going on in London, almost too much. It's difficult to actually, again, this was something I remember seeing, like lots of bands, lots of concerts of, like, and you sort of, again, take that for granted. You don't realise. I just thought, oh right, this band are playing here, but then when you live, for example, where I live now, you don't get like the biggest bands playing here, whilst in London that's just normal, for example, because there's so much going on.
Like the other day I went and I like, you can just literally go to an interview with one of the most famous people, like, Michelle Obama, I think just before COVID happened, came here and did an interview about her book.
So you can go to the book opening.
Yeah, you just go there and you just buy tickets,
exactly.
and it's just not a big deal, It's you just get to, like, the culture is big. Like, there's people from all over the world that come to London to visit or to live, absolutely. And so on.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, sure, Michelle Obama. Yeah, whatever. Which and it is like that. I totally admit it just becomes the norm. Whilst here, like, again, if Michelle Obama came to Sicily, it would be like huge news. So yes, like I said, I hope people have got a few more insights about London, and thank you very much, Halima, for your insights.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you soon.
All right, bye everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was me speaking to Halima about London. So let's have a look at some of this R&R vocabulary that I took from the conversation. She said, we sometimes take things for granted in London. So when you take something for granted, you don't expect it. It's just the norm for you, let's say. We had that a few times, the norm, like normal. We had as well underwhelmed when we mentioned sometimes all of these wonderful buildings. We are just underwhelmed by them. So when you are underwhelmed by something, it doesn't impress you, let's say. We also had a lovely term when I said someone that lives on the opposite side of London may as well live in Australia. So this may as well, in this context, we use it to say a situation is the same as the hypothetical thing, let's say. So the hypothetical thing in this situation is living in Australia, and I'm saying living in London, well, the opposite side of London is the same as living in Australia. So the situation is the same as the hypothetical thing. Quite difficult, I know, but a lovely, lovely term. We had commute, which, remember, is your journey to work, how long it takes you to get to work. We also had the word anomaly when Halima said going to the gym only takes her 30 minutes, and this is an anomaly, so something strange, okay, something different from the standard, because the standard is 1 hour to arrive everywhere. So this is something a bit different. It's a bit peculiar, a bit strange. It's an anomaly. We also had the word utmost when I said friendliness should be met with utmost confusion. So utmost, total confusion. I also mentioned how it's a sad state of affairs that you can't be friendly anymore. You can't speak to children without people thinking you're a paedophile, basically, which is not a world I want to live in. I had clued up as well when I said I'm not so clued up on Uber. So I'm not so clued up. I'm not so well informed. We had black cabs. So that's how we call taxis in London because they're black, and cab is another word for taxi. We had the term shelling out when I said just with rent and transport, you're shelling out a lot of money. So you're spending a lot of money you are having to take from your pocket, let's say, even if you pay with your bank card, whatever. And Halima used a lovely term when she said sometimes living in other places is dirt cheap. That term, I don't know why we say dirt cheap, but we do. Something's very cheap, it's dirt cheap. Anyway, remember all of the R&R vocabulary will be on the website, rockandrollenglish.com/episode 236, and links to Halima's website, her academy, and everything else. Speaking of that, the Rock and Roll English family membership will be open again sometime next month, so start preparing yourselves. But in the meantime, just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.